Okay, so here we are in number 15. An object is thrown upward from the top of a hill. The height of the object is h after t seconds according to this equation. What is the highest point the object will reach? Okay, well let's think about that for a second. So if we were to do a graph of this thing, remember this is a upside down U shape, right? Because it's got a negative in the front there. It's an x squared equation, which we know that's a U shape, a parabola, and it's negative. So it's upside down. So it's going to be something like this, right? An upside down U shape, which is what happens when somebody's standing on a hill, right? And they throw a ball up in the air. Okay, so what do they want from us now? They want the highest point. Where's the highest point? Right there. So this is the highest point. Highest point. So what is that? What's that highest point? Well, that's the center of the U shape, right? If you kept that graph going, right, if you just did both sides, that's the center of the U shape. So basically they're asking us to find the center of the U shape. That's the highest point. How do you find the center of the U shape? Remember the equation is x equals negative b over 2a. It's the outside of the quadratic formula. It's the beginning of the quadratic formula. So x equals, now what's a and b? Well, you know, a is negative 16, b is 192, c is 1360. So negative b, 192 over 2a. So x equals, and then the two negatives make positive 6, right? See the negative here and the negative here. This is negative 192 over negative 32, which is positive 6. Maybe I should move it down here. So it's negative 192 over negative 32, which is positive 6. So that's the x value. Now we need to find the y value. That means it's over at 6, this is time, seconds, 6 seconds, right? Because time is in seconds. Time in seconds. And this is height. The y-axis is height. So in feet. So let's find the y value. How do you find the y value? We take the equation, or the h equation. H equals negative 16t squared, right down here, plus 192t, plus 1360. And x is the same as t, really, right? Because time is the x-axis. So plug in time equals 6 seconds. So plug in 6 right there and right there. So the height will equal minus 16 times 6 squared plus 192 times 6 plus 1360. So hit the buttons on your calculator. And I'm getting 1936. The height is 1936. So this is the point. Over 6, at 6 seconds, the ball will be 1936 feet high. That's the highest point the ball will reach. Good, okay. Let's go to the next one. Number 16. They give us this diagram, this graph, and they want us to find what is the least possible degree of the polynomial graphed above. Well, remember, the degree equals the number of turning points plus 1. Remember that? You want to put that on your 3x5 card for the exam. So here is a turning point, and here is a turning point, and here is a turning point, and here is a turning point. So we've got 4 turning points. So the degree, 4 turning points plus 1, the degree must be at least 5. 5 or more to have 4 turning points. Degree 5 or more. Number 17. Polynomial degree 3 has a root of multiplicity 2 at x equals 3, a root of multiplicity 1 at x equals negative 5, and the y-intercept is negative 31.5. Find the formula for p of x. Okay, how do we do that? Well, the first thing we got to know, remember the formula for p of x is going to be a, we'll try to find a in a minute, times x, and then opposite, and then that's going to be to some power, and this power here is going to be the multiplicity. And then we're going to have x opposite, and again the power is the multiplicity. Okay, so we have p of x equals a, we don't know a yet, x, and then the opposite of the first root, the root is what is it, 2? So the root, oh no, the multiplicity is 2, at x equals 3. So that'll be minus 3, right? The opposite of 3 is minus 3, and the multiplicity is 2, which means the power is 2. The next one, the x is negative 5, so the opposite, plus 5. The multiplicity is 1, so just first power. All right, so there's the beginning part. Now we have to figure out what the a is in the front. How do we do that? We plug in the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept means x is 0, y is negative 31.5. Remember, intercept points always have the opposite letter 0. So a y-intercept has x 0. So when y is negative 31.5, x is 0. Remember, on a graph, you know, if your graph, your whatever, has here's the y-intercept, that means it's over 0 up some number, isn't it? A y-intercept always has an x value of 0 and a y value of some number. Okay, so with that in mind, then, we plug in the x equals 0 here, and the y is this, because remember the front is always the y value, the function value, the p of x, that's the y, so the negative 31.5 is a times 0 minus 3 squared times 0 plus 5 to the first. We're going to solve for a now. See what I did there? I plugged in x is 0, at the same time y, this is y, right? Function values are y values, is negative 31.5. That's what a y-intercept means. At a y-intercept, the x is 0. So we can solve now for a. This is going to be 9, because negative 3 squared. And this is going to be 5. So negative 31.5 is a times 45. 5 times 9 is 45. And then, making this look a little funny here. How do we now solve for a? Divide by 45. A equals, hit the buttons on your calculator. I'm getting negative 0.7. So there we go. So our function p of x, which is a, so that's negative 0.7 times x minus 3 squared, just bringing it down from right here, times x plus 5 to the first. So it's this one, isn't it? There it is. Number 18. Write the expression in factored form for the polynomial of least degree. Okay, so again, we got to think about the degree and where it hits 0. So notice this polynomial hits 0 at negative 4 and at negative 3 and at 4. So the polynomial p of x will equal a, and then x opposite to some kind of power, and then we just keep going with that. I'll just call it p for power, and then make that a little better there. an x and opposite to a power. Now we have 3 places where it hits the x-axis. So there's going to be 3 of these parentheses, x and opposite to different powers. So that's going to equal a x. And now what's the opposite of the first one? The opposite of -4 is +4. That's going to be first power. Remember how the powers work? Power equals 1 when it passes through, like right there and right there. See how the graph just passes through? Do you understand what I'm talking about? The graph just goes right through and then right through. So at those 2 places, at -4 and -3, it passes through. But at 4, it bounces. So the power equals 2 when it bounces. See how it bounces before it comes down and boing, bounces back up? So whenever it bounces, that means the power is 2 there. You know that, right? Because it's a U shape there. It's a U shape. It's a x squared. It's got to be second power. That's what x squared looks like. All right, so getting back to the problem then. So this second one will be x, and the opposite of -3 is +3 to the first power. So both these are power 1. And then the last one, x, and then the opposite of +4, -4, and that's going to be second power because it bounces there. So there's my function. Now I have to find a. How am I going to find a? So that's all step 1. To find a, plug in the y-intercept. And what's the y-intercept? Right here. Over 0, up 4. So that means x0, y4. So I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to take this 4 right here, and I'm going to plug it in right there. So 4 equals, get this out of the way, 4 equals a, and take this 0 and plug it in for x, x, x. 0 plus 4 to the first, 0 plus 3 to the first, 0 minus 4 squared. So that's 4 equals a times 4 times 3. And minus 4 squared is 16, right? Minus 4 squared is 16. That's 4 equals 8. You multiply those in your calculator. What's that going to be? 12 times 16, 192. And then to finish solving for a there, I divide by 192. Boom, boom. A equals. And it looks like they have fractions, so I'll just reduce that fraction. Instead of making it a decimal, I just look at whatever they did. You know, the last problem, they did decimals in the front, so I just made a decimal. This one, they have fractions in the front, so I'll just reduce the fraction. Divide top and bottom by 4, and you get 1 over 48. So there it is. It's y equals 1 over 48. X plus 4 to the first, I'm looking right here. Then x plus 3 to the first, and x minus 4 squared. And which one is that one? X plus 4, x plus 3, x minus 4 squared right there. 1 over 48, x plus 4, x plus 3, x minus 4 squared. There we go. So it's all about understanding about x and opposite, and then the powers. It's a first power when it passes through, and a second power when it bounces. All right, so this is a similar kind of thing here. So right here, it bounces, so that's power. Power is the same as multiplicity. 2, remember, whenever it bounces, it's 2. Same thing here, power or multiplicity must be 2. And right here it bounces through, so power or multiplicity must be 1. Okay, so, and this is at what? Negative 5, this one's at positive 1, this one's at positive 5. So at negative 5, it's got multiplicity 1, no, multiplicity 2. At negative 5, multiplicity 2. At positive 1, multiplicity, oh no, 2 also. So the first 2 should be 2, there we go. Negative 5, multiplicity 2, and at 1, it's got multiplicity 2, and at 5, multiplicity 1. There it is, D on that one. So that multiplicity is the power. It's the same thing as the power that would be on the term if we wrote it out as a polynomial function. Number 20. Find the y-intercept of this equation. Okay. How do we find the y-intercept? Remember, a y-intercept has x equals 0. Right? If you think about a graph and a function, has a y-intercept that's over 0 up some number, the x has to be 0 at a y-intercept point, doesn't it? So, okay, so the y-intercept x is 0, so I take this function that they gave me right here, y equals x minus 3 squared times x plus 5, and I plug in x is 0, and I solve for it. Remember, the function in the front, that's y. That's why I put y in the front. Plug in x is 0, because at a y-intercept, x is 0. When you're at a y-intercept point, that means your x-coordinate is 0. So 0 minus 3 squared times 0 plus 5. That's minus 3 squared times 5. That's 9 times 5. That's 45. Ooh, that answer's not there. So it's none of these. On that, some of the answers are none of these. All right, number 21. So which of the following are true for this function? We have f of x equals this function, and we're talking about as x goes to positive infinity and negative infinity, what does y do? Well, the way to figure that out, remember, is we want to take this, so this is y equals, and we want to, for positive infinity, if x is going to positive infinity, what's the only term that matters? Remember, you can just plug in like plus 100. So y will equal 3 times 100 cubed plus 2 times 100 minus 100 to the 4th. So what's going to happen? If you use your calculator, 100 to the 3rd power, that's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. 3 million. Plus this is 200 minus, and this is going to have 8 zeros. So it's going to be 100 million. So do you see that? We have y equals 3 million plus 200, that's nothing, minus 100 million. 3 million minus 100 million. Is that going to be positive or negative? That's certainly heading, y is basically going to negative infinity. It's 3 million minus 100 million. In other words, this is the only term that matters, right? Because it's the highest power term. See how this term right here made the biggest number, made the minus 100 million, because it's got the highest power. So the highest power is what is most powerful and is going to take over when you go off to positive infinity or to negative infinity. So if you go to positive infinity, like positive 100, it's going to go to negative infinity. And now what if you go the other way? What if you let x go to negative infinity? This was positive infinity, like negative 100. Let's plug in negative 100. We'll get 3 times negative 100 cubed plus 2 times negative 100 minus negative 100 to the fourth. So remember, when you're plugging into a function, put parentheses around what you're plugging in. And so what do we get here? Well, this is 3 minus sign, so it'll be negative 3 million again. This will be minus 200, it's nothing. And this is minus, and this guy, 4 negative signs, is going to be positive. 2 zeros, 2 more, 2 more, and 2 more, because I got to do the 2 zeros 4 times. So in other words, it's 100 million again. It's the most important term. It's the dominant term. It's 100 million. And it's negative 100 million, isn't it? So it's going to negative infinity. So y is going to negative infinity, both as x goes to positive infinity and to negative infinity. So negative infinity on both. For y, that looks like right there, answer C. Y is going to negative infinity on both. All right, 22. How do we take that equation that they're giving us there on 22 and get this out of the way here. And we want to take this and make it look like that. Make it look like parentheses squared. How do you change the form? It's called completing the square. So I've got to complete the square, meaning make it a parentheses squared. See how these are all parentheses squared? So I got to make it one of those. How do you know which one it's going to be? Well, here's what you do. You take the original equation, y equals x squared minus 6x plus 5, and you've got to add just the right amount to both sides. How do you know what amount? Well, I gave you a special rule. You take the number in the middle, take it over on the side, and you put it over 2. So here I'll just write a formula first off. You've got to take the middle number over 2 squared. And you have to add to both sides. You've got to add that to both sides. What's the middle number? Negative 6 over 2. And then you got to square it. You got to divide it by 2 and square it. So what is that? Plus 9. Right? So it's always the middle number divided by 2 and then squared. So plus 9. So you've got to add 9 to both sides. Oh, and you got to move that 5 out of the way. We don't want to just add it straight to the 5. We want to move the 5 out of the way and add the 9 right in there. So that these three, the 5's still there, the 5 that we had from the beginning is still there. So we added 9 to both sides. What do we have now? Y plus 9, because we added 9 to that side. And now these three, we added that 9. They will factor, guaranteed. The plus 5 is still there. He's just sitting there. Does that see what we're doing? We took the middle number. So I probably should have said, step 1, move over the 5. Just move it, slide over the 5. Slide over the 5. And then step 2, do the middle number divided by 2 squared. So this, how does this factor? Minus 3 minus 3. You see that? If you were to FOIL that out, that would add to be minus 6 in the middle and multiply to be positive 9 at the back, wouldn't it? So that's y plus 9 is x minus 3 squared plus 5. We're almost done. See how they want us to get y alone? So the last step to get y alone, subtract 9 from both sides. And so y equals x minus 3 squared. And 5 minus 9 is minus 4. There it is. The answer is B. X minus 3 squared minus 4. That means that's exactly the same as the original. It's just in a different form. It's like saying one or uno. You're saying the same number in two different languages. We're saying the same expression. Y equals the same stuff. If you multiplied this out and gathered like terms, it would go right back to this. They're the same thing. We just changed the form. What form? We made it parentheses squared, which is a very useful form in higher math. It's used a lot. We completed the square. We made it a square. How did we do it again? Step 1, we moved over the 5. Step 2, we took the middle number over 2 squared. Got that 9, and then added that to both sides. I put the 9 right there and the 9 right there. And then these 3, 5 has been moved over, factored as something squared. And then I just subtracted the 9 to get y alone, and there it is. All right, 23 here. Perform the division. So this one we have to divide, and then synthetic division on 24 and 25, which is easier. So let's do 23. So you know it's a long division, right? The bottom, minus 4x minus 5, into the top. 12x cubed plus 3x squared minus 35x minus 13. Here we go. So what am I going to put up here? What on the top, what times the front will match the front. Remember, that's what it's all about. Whatever you put on the top, what it's going to multiply, what times the front will match the front. It's got to match it exactly. Same sign, same everything. So what times negative 4x will exactly make 12x cubed? So it's going to be negative 3x squared. Remember, out front numbers multiply, powers add. So negative 3 times negative 4 is plus 12. The x1 and the x2 add to be x to the third. And then it also goes there. Negative 3x squared times negative 5 is plus 15x squared. All right. What are we going to do? Now we subtract. How do we subtract that whole group? We distribute the minus sign. Makes it negative. Put it right here. Makes it negative. And goes right here and makes this also negative. So, all right, let's do it. 12x cubed minus 12x cubed, 0. 3x squared minus, that's a negative now, minus 15x squared is minus 12x squared, isn't it? 3 minus 15 is minus 12. Bring down the minus 35x. Bring down the 13. Get rid of the 0. All right, there's our first step. Next, we're going to write something up here. What, and where are we looking? Front to front. What times the front, what times negative 4x will exactly match negative 12x squared. Same sign, same everything. Well, it's going to have to be plus 3x. Remember, because out front numbers multiply, powers add. This is x1, x1. So so plus 3 times minus 4 is minus 12x squared. Right? So that 3x is going to multiply that guy, and he's also going to multiply that guy. So that'll be minus 15x. And now we're going to subtract. So when we subtract, we're going to go boom and make that plus. And boom, remember the minus distributes because you're subtracting the whole bottom line. So it's got to change all the signs on the bottom, doesn't it? All right, let's add them up. Minus 12x squared and now plus 12x squared, 0. That's what always happens, 0. Minus 35x and now plus 15. Use your calculator. Minus 35 plus 15. If you lose $35 and plus back, gain back 15, you'll lost 20. Bring down the minus 13. All right, one more step. It's a long process here. One more step. Put this back the way it was here. Okay, one more step. Where do we look? Front to front, right? What times the front will match the front. Same sign, same everything. What times minus 4x will match minus 20x plus 5. That plus 5 goes there and there. So it'd be minus 20x, and plus 5 times minus 5, minus 25. All right, we need to now subtract, which means that minus sign is going to go boom, make that a plus, and boom, make that a plus. Minus 20x plus 20x, 0. Minus 13 plus 25 is plus 12. So, get rid of that 0. That must be the remainder. So, which answer is right? So we have this answer up top here. Minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 5. Minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 5. The remainder is 12 on that one. So minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 5. Looks like these three all have minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 5. But the remainder is supposed to be 12. This is a 10, a 15, and a 7. And this one's not even right at all. None of them are right. It's none of the above. The remainder should be 12. You put plus 12 over the left side. Minus 4x minus 5. Yeah, they all have the right denominator, but it was supposed to be a 12 remainder. And none of them had 12, so it was none of these. Yeah, so that's always how you write the final answer on these. It's minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 5 plus, and then you put bottom, that's the 12, over the left side, this, minus 4x minus 5. So that should have been the real answer. It was not there. None of these. All right. And looks like we used up all of our space to do, or I guess I can squeeze in 24 here. Okay. So let's do 24. Now 24 is synthetic division. Synthetic. That's a lot easier than that terrible long division. So synthetic division, remember how that works? Put your line here, and you put your opposite. Remember, you put opposite of the plus 5. That'd be minus 5. And then you put the coefficients. 1, 8, and then look, 0x to the first. There's no x to the first. It's missing. Must be 0. And then minus 80. Don't forget that's a minus 80, not just an 80. So see how that 0x to the first is missing? It goes third power, second power, first power is missing, and then no x at all. All right. How does this work? We're going to bring down the 1. And then remember what we do? We multiply and write the answer right there. Negative 5 times 1, negative 5. Then add them up. 8 minus 5, 3. Then we do it again. Negative 5 times 3. Write the answer right there. Negative 5 times 3, negative 15. Add them up. 0 minus 15 is minus 15. Last step. Grab the minus 5. Minus 5 times minus 15. Two negatives make positive 75. And add them up. Remember, this last spot here is your remainder. Minus 80 plus 75. You lose $80 and gain back 75. You're down 5. That's our remainder, minus 5, which is right here. Are the other terms correct? Remember how it works. It's minus 15, and then this would be 3x, and this would be 1x squared, remainder minus 5. X squared plus 3x minus 15, remainder minus 5. There it is, D. All right, one more, number 25. Find the quotient and remainder using synthetic division. So one more time on synthetic. So we are going to, whoops, got a little more room here. Put the opposite, negative 4. And put the 1 up here, bring down the 1. And multiply. And put the answer right there. Oh, I forgot to write the other coefficients. What am I doing? This is 1 right here. This is 1x cubed. This is, oh, we're missing x squared, so 0x squared. Right, we go x to the 4, x to the 3, x squared is missing, so it's 0. And then comes 44x, and then minus 13. All right, there we go. I forgot to get that all set up. Okay, back to the problem. So bring down the 1, we multiply. Minus 4 times 1 is minus 4. Add them up, 1 minus 4, minus 3. And do it again. Multiply. So minus 4 times minus 3, plus 12. Add them up. 0 and 12 is 12. Do it again. Multiply. Negative 4 times times positive 12. Negative 4 times positive 12. Negative 48. Add them up. 44 minus 48 is minus 4. Last step here. Take the minus 4 and multiply minus 4. Minus 4 times minus 4 plus 16. That's our remainder. 16 minus 13, 3 is our remainder. So our answer is, so this is going to be, I'll start at the back, minus 4. And this will have to be 12x. And this will be minus 3x squared. And this will be 1x cubed, remainder 3. Right, it just goes up in power. We start with the minus 4, and then it just goes x to the first, x to the second, x to the third. So x cubed minus 3x squared plus 12x minus 4, remainder 3. There it is, D. We got it.